So literally, Joe Biden, as he abandons every single promise he made, which there wasn't a lot of them, as he abandons every promise, he's now reaching out to basically Bill Clinton's wingman, a literally a Lawrence Summers, who's honestly worse than a lot of Republicans, who was shitting on the last on giving stimulus checks, who fearmongers about inflation. Biden privately called Lawrence Summers, who's been criticizing the administration. By the way, if you don't know, Lawrence Summers was advising the Biden campaign. If you don't know who Lawrence Summers is, he literally pushed Glass-Steagall, which separated commercial and investment banking, and that led to the 2008 financial crash. He pushed NAFTA, which literally took a goddamn machete to the Midwest and other parts of the country, and is why half of these places, which I've been, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Pennsylvania, literally look like episodes of The Walking Dead, some parts of these cities. He's being framed by CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, The Washington Post as FDR. Why? Because he gave us a Band-Aid for a gunshot wound? Yeah, the COVID relief bill. It had some good things in it. It's all temporary, nothing structural. They're trying to gaslight you and gaslight everybody into thinking Biden is somehow picking up the mantle of FDR. Meanwhile, he's calling right-wing Democrats like Lawrence Summers. Biden made the call as the White House is weighing critical decisions on the economy, including how much and whether to trim a far-reaching infrastructure plan in response to Republican demands. The conversation also unfolded against the backdrops of warnings from Summers and others that Biden's spending plans present a risk of inflation and an overheating economy. You know, I love these folks like Lawrence Summers, excuse my French, who fearmonger about inflation. They don't seem to talk a lot about the inflation created by gentrification, which I call economic terrorism. They don't like to talk about the inflation caused by all of these corporations buying off our local and city level politicians so that we could put a Whole Foods on every corner, so we could literally build up 10 to 15 blocks in all of the cities around America, Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C., L.A., San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Cleveland. I could go on. That is what's driving people out of their cities, people native to their cities who cannot afford the rent anymore, who cannot afford even going to the grocery store anymore. I was just on my honeymoon with my wife, obviously. We went at the end to San Francisco on Haight Street, one of the last bastions of free love, the 1960s, kind of a progressive time. They literally have a Whole Foods on the side of Haight Street now. Okay? So they don't give a damn about inflation, i.e., prices going up everywhere because our politicians have literally sold our cities and the downtown areas to their real estate donors and to land grubbers, real estate, financial lawyers, Wall Street banks. They're literally selling off your towns and cities to corporations, driving you out. That's called inflation. Why don't we worry about that? Bernie, who I'm not happy with right now, was the only person on the campaign trail who talked about inflation. But Biden wants to call a disgraced, discredited buffoon, Lawrence Summers, to ask for his advice on how to, I don't know, get Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, Pat Toomey, Mitch Turkey Neck McConnell, get them over to our side? Are you f***ing kidding me? The White House has downplayed the extent of the threat posed by inflation, arguing it will be transitionary and manageable, if necessary, by the Federal Reserve. Summers, the Treasury Secretary under Bill Clinton, top economic advisor to Obama, and former president of Harvard, is a prominent Democrat voice on economic matters. But he also has become a nemesis of the party's left flank, which sees him as a representative of a misguided centrism. This is part of the problem. Colin, I'm going to read this one more time. Is a prominent Democratic voice on economic matters. This is why we even created Status Coup, because we need a journalistic coup d'etat. This Washington Post propaganda, prominent Democratic voice on economic matters. Oh, yeah? In what world? The man who pushed Glass-Steagall, which destroyed the global financial economy, which people, even as the pandemic hit, were still recovering from the 2008 financial crash? This is the mind of the left? The man who pushed Glass-Steagall, which actual intelligent economists like Richard Wolff were saying, if you repeal Glass-Steagall at the end of the 90s, you will have a financial cataclysm, which happened later. Oh, the man who, after he pushed Glass-Steagall as Obama's advisor, basically pushed Obama to water down the stimulus and give it and make the stimulus in 2009 and 2010 literally 2/3 tax cuts. Oh, the man who is a top advisor for Obama, who basically pushed Obama. Yeah, nothing we could do. You got to let the banks foreclose on these black and brown people. Millions of people foreclosed on through no fault of their own. Oh, the man who pushed NAFTA, which has destroyed the economy. And by the way, contrary to the corporate propaganda, Donald Trump didn't win because of Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump won because of NAFTA. How do I know? I was at the rallies in 2016 and 2020. I covered it because Status Coup goes in the field. Hint, hint, sign up. statuscoup.com/join. statuscoup.com/join. I was at the rallies. Trump had these people at the rallies. He had them at NAFTA. He had them at NAFTA. These cities, these towns have been decimated by NAFTA. It didn't take a rocket scientist to see why they gravitated to Trump's message. Of course, Trump was full of shit. Of course, he did nothing to bring back jobs. Foxconn in Wisconsin was a gigantic con, but he sold it pretty well. But this goes back to what Jimmy and I were talking about. Like, at a certain point, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, what more do you need to see? What more do you need to see that you can't move this man left, that you can't negotiate with Joe Biden, that it doesn't matter if his chief of staff will have a meeting with you. He's literally punking you right in front of your face. He's calling Lawrence Summers. And by the way, there's a reason Biden's calling Lawrence Summers. This is how this works, by the way. There's a reason this got leaked to the Washington Post. Biden also wants to send signals to his Wall Street donors. Biden also wants to send signals to his big pharma donors. Biden also wants to send signals to all the special interests that, oh yeah, all this FDR talk, all this huge infrastructure package, this is all for show. We're just doing business. Why does he want to do that? Why does he want to send that signal to Wall Street? Why does he want to send that signal that, don't worry about the COVID relief bill, don't worry about the checks, we'll be getting back to neoliberal business now that the pandemic's, quote, over, because Democrats are already in midterm election campaign mode. The DNC is currently fundraising like gangbusters from Wall Street, big donors. So Biden, he wants to signal to Wall Street, hey, baby, we're still open for business. Don't worry about this progressive language. Start donating now because we're going to have a tough road ahead of us to keep our slim margin in the House and to keep the Senate. It's perpetual campaigning. I got news for you. And now you have this bullshit, again, with the Senate parliamentarian. You have this bullshit with the Senate parliamentarian just ruled. Again, unelected bureaucrat, has no actual binding power. Every opinion is advisory. But now the media frames, the Senate parliamentarian has ruled that the Democrats could only use reconciliation, which allows them to pass a major legislation with no Republican votes only one more time this year, because the unelected Senate parliamentarian says so. I don't remember the Senate parliamentarian being on the debate stage with the 25 Democrats at one point. It's absurd. And I got to tell you, I typically don't use the sellout language, the fraud language. I try to not be, juvenile about it. But at this point, they are selling us out. I don't know what their motives are. I'm sure some of them are good people. They are selling us out. They're not fighting for the things that we donated to, that you voted, you volunteered for, that you donated for, that you phone banked for. They're not fighting for those things. I mean, other than tweeting and woke signaling, I don't see much fighting from progressives in the House. Frankly, I won't get into sources, but I know people in Bernie world that have basically told me, like, he's done. He's tired. Literally. I know people in Bernie's world that have literally told me he's done. He's sleep at the switch. So I don't know. I don't want to be super cynical. I try to give people hope, but I also keep it real. It's not looking good right now for the progressive movement. I think we're right now, particularly because we don't have elected leaders that are strategizing, galvanizing the troops, fighting for actual policies when they can be. They can. Right now, they could be fighting. And by simply saying, yeah, no, Biden, you want infrastructure? We'll talk about infrastructure after a $15 minimum wage. After that, other than that, we're not interested in talking infrastructure. You're not going to have our votes. We're not going to meet with your chief of staff. $15 minimum wage, then we'll talk infrastructure. Very simple. Very simple. Let the media crucify you. Let the media crucify you. It's very simple. But at a certain point, if they're not going to lead, you got to find people that will.